Get off the sidelines and be a part of the show. Call Steve toll-free at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629. Here is Steve Malzberg.
The second reason why I believe our country is weaker today than it was 5 years ago is because we no longer have a government that people around the world want to emulate. For years and years, decade upon decade, the United States government, with all its flaws, was seen as being able to get things done, to move its economy, to move its freedom, to move its interests at home and around the world in an effective way. And now, we are not seen that way. The dysfunction in Washington, D.C., is no longer being emulated around the world. It is being mocked around the world.
All right, folks, there he is, Christie, who was in Las Vegas along with some other possible presidential nominees on the Republican side last week, speaking at the Republican Jewish Coalition. Joining us now on the panel is our friend Peter Morici, economist, professor at Maryland University, and also Newsmax contributor. And joining us also is Kevin Jackson. He is a radio host and author of The Big Black Lie, which I believe we're going to be able to put up on the big TV screen. Hello, gentlemen. Good to talk to both of you. All right, you know what, Peter, let's start with you here. This is what one of the things I can't take with Christie. Whether it was at the Reagan Library in 2012 or later at the convention in 2012 or here in Vegas, he lumps Washington together. He's unwilling to make the distinction and say that the reason things aren't getting done in Washington, unlike me in New Jersey, of course, is because you have a president who says, I will not negotiate. You have Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, who is so far to the left that there's nothing to negotiate with. You can't get things done. But he blames everybody, and I think that's a mistake.
Well, Mr. Christie really isn't a Republican. If you recall, when things were going the wrong way for Mitt Romney, Mr. Christie embraced Mr. Obama without actually endorsing him. He's an embarrassment to the Republican Party in a lot of ways. He might not have known that the bridge was being closed in advance, but the kind of people he had running around his office to close the bridge would indicate the guy is not someone that we should take seriously to be president of the United States. Unfortunately, anything can happen in primaries, but I don't think he's something that's going to happen in the primaries. I think he attracts a lot of attention. He's an interesting and colorful fellow. But who was the independent governor of Minnesota, the wrestler, the pro wrestler?
Well, he was Jesse Ventura.
Exactly. This guy is one slice above Jesse Ventura in terms of political credibility and about 3 slices below Mr. Ventura in terms of competence. If he can't manage to keep a bridge open that was kept open for generations across the Hudson River, then what good is he?
And Kevin, you want to weigh in on what Peter said? I mean, Peter never says what he really thinks. That's the problem.
He starts talking about slices.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because Greg, the director, and I, during the commercial break, were actually seriously talking about pizza. Now I'm really hungry, but go ahead.
You know, I don't know how that covers with respect to what's happening in Washington, D.C. To Peter's point, I don't think Christie's going to be a major player. I think that the media has given him a taste of what he's going to get with just the bridge thing, and I think he's going to get a lot more scrutiny that you would think he's ready for, because he certainly deals with things the way conservatives really like to see him deal with the audience, for example, when he was talking about the teachers union and things like that. But when you start getting into policy issues, real policy issues, it's easy as a conservative to start parting ways with Christie and seeing that he's another one of these McCain reach across the aisle types. With respect to what's happening in D.C., and I think one of the points that was made to me when you guys asked me to come on was why liberals can't govern.
Yeah, that was a piece on, so I was going to talk about that, but this kind of fits into that.
Yeah, well, look at all the things that have happened just recently with the Democrats and their scandals. You've got black Pennsylvania congresspeople state reps trying to buy or being sold, effectively going onto the chopping block or the slave market and saying, we'll accept money in order to sell black people down the river and convince them about voter ID. You've got Yee talking about gun control in California, while meanwhile running guns. And my point is this. If a liberal tells you what he's for, in other words, if he says, I'm for transparency, as Barack Obama says, what is the least transparent administration in the history of this country? What Barack Obama's administration. They tell you what they want in order to get elected, and then they do the opposite. Look at the top 10 cities that are either suffering financially. They're all run by Democrats.
Right, Peter. Yeah, that's a great point, right, Peter?
Oh, absolutely. All you have to do is look at the handiwork to determine they can't run anything. But I tell you, the reason that they do so badly is whenever we get our hands on power, it's intoxicating. I was in Senator Sessions' office this morning, and the beautiful office that he has with this huge desk and everything. I mean, it really is intoxicating. I was saying, gee, I would really like this job just to have that desk, okay? But you see, if you're a Republican and you mess up like Mr. Christie, the press is all over you relentlessly, day after day, only paralleled by CNN's coverage of the plane, okay? I mean, they're on top of him at MSNBC day after day after day after day for closing a bridge, for causing a traffic jam. Whereas Hillary Clinton denied aid to American diplomats in Benghazi and caused their death. She's got her hands dirty with that, as any politician might ever have. And look at the pass she gets. Really, what was the bigger crime? Closing the bridge or selling those men down the river in Benghazi? But look what they choose to cover. So are you surprised that they behave the way they do? They're basically a bunch of teenagers who've taken over the principal's office on a Saturday afternoon. And they've ordered out for, excuse me, Mr. Ballsberg, all the pizza they can eat.
All right, guys, I want you to hear something. This is Bill Maher, and they're talking about, they have comedian W. Kamau Bell. I don't know who he is. And he's an African-American. And they're talking about Paul Ryan, making statements that he believes might be racist. And listen and watch this.
Let me read. Here's something else Paul Ryan said. He said, when it comes to getting an education, too many of our young people just can't be bothered. They're sitting on couches for hours playing video games, watching TV. Instead of dreaming of being a teacher or a lawyer or a business leader, they're fantasizing about being a baller or a rapper.
Well, comedian.
Oh, wait, that wasn't him. That was Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama said that.
Okay.
All right, Steve, let me answer that.
Dead silence when he pulled a fast one on his guest.
Kamau Bell, correct. Yeah. So let me just tell you what happened there was prior to that on the Ryan comment. Kamau Bell, who has a show called Totally Biased, and he's a leftist, black leftist. He's a racist, and he runs that show, and he is totally biased. And he immediately says, and even though there's no mention of race, he says that Paul Ryan was talking about blacks and Latinos. They play a more incendiary statement made by Michelle Obama, total silence. Now, Kamau Bell goes on to talk about truth is truth and a lie is a lie. It's not the case. With the left, they have to wait to see who it is that made the comment before they can actually say anything. And this is true across the board with these race baiters. Anyway, I don't want to take up the rest of the segment.
Let Peter weigh in real quick. We got less than a minute. Peter, go ahead.
Well, I think that's quite correct. I mean, the reaction you get depends on whether you're for their issues or not. There's one standard of behavior and conduct for conservatives and another for liberals. There's no two ways around it. And I think this illustrates it. And I think the other panelist is absolutely correct.
But I want to make one other comment.
Yeah, quickly.
I applaud Bill Maher, and that hardly ever comes out of Kevin Jackson's mouth, but I applaud him for setting that guy up and showcasing the duplicitous nature of liberalism, and that's exactly what happened in that clip.
Good point. Very good point. Okay, we appreciate your time, Kevin. Radio host Kevin Jackson, author of The Big Black Lie. And I know Peter Morici, a University of Maryland professor, economist, and Newsmax contributor, will be back on the panel in the next hour and the hour after that. So stick around, folks. When we come back, Judy Miller will join us on the Steve Malzberg Show.
Introducing